So good morning, everyone. How are you guys today? I am good. So just a quick recap on yesterday's lesson. Yesterday we discussed basic economic concepts, right? And I'd just like to ask you, which concepts do you remember from yesterday? We discussed 7 in total, and I'd just like you to name them. Okay, Abija?
Should I name 1 or 2?
Any, yeah, you can give me 2.
Absolute scarcity and relative.
Yes, absolute and relative scarcity. Thank you for that. Naledi?
Demand and supply.
Demand and supply. Oh, so you guys are pairing them up like that, ne? I like that. Savannah?
I can't think of the topic's name now.
Okay. Okay, think about it. Chris? You were responding, sorry. Yeah, but that was already stated by Naledi. She gave us demand and supply. So so far we have absolute relative scarcity, and then we have demand and supply. So we have 3 more. Which other ones can you give us? Sorry? Savannah?
We learned about like what economics is.
Yeah, because that's very important. This is the subject that you're doing, and you should know how to define it. Much as you should know how to define business studies, you should know how to define, what other subjects do you do? Physics, yeah. So you should know what the subject is and what it entails, right? Okay, thank you.
And also...
Okay, so now that we've gotten a recap of what we discussed yesterday, we will move on to today's topic, or today's task of the day. Today we're working on the question paper. You guys know that you have tests coming, right? Yep. So in preparation for that, we will be doing paper 1 and paper 2, and we will incorporate some discussion of concepts, some drawing of graphs in some cases, so that you are very well prepared. Okay. This mask is frustrating me. So now that I won't fix that, yeah. Okay, cool. So what we'll do today is we'll discuss section A, and then at the end of the lesson I will tell you what you must do when you get home, né? So the way our discussion will go is we'll be responding to the questions and then taking some pauses to give explanations, definition of concepts, and offering examples to clarify some concepts better. Is that okay? Are we clear about the task of the day? Okay. Right. So I'd like someone to read.
Question 1?
Yes. Penyo? On Teams? You're here, ne? You're following us, ne? Okay, so we are getting to discuss the questions. We're doing multiple choice now. We're heading to 1.1.1. All right. Thank you. Savannah, you can read first.
Various options are defined as answers to the following questions. Choose a correct answer and write only the letter A to B. Next to question 1 to like 1.8 in answer. For example, 1.9 to B. Must I read
Yes. Yeah.
1.1.1. Scarcity means that there are ... resources to produce all goods that we need. A. Sufficient. B. Insufficient. C. Fixed. And D. Variable.
You know why this question excites me?
Because we spoke about scarcity yesterday.
Yes, we did. So can you give me the correct answer then?
The correct answer scarcity means there are insufficient resources.
Yes. What does that mean? When we're saying that resources are insufficient, what does that mean?
It kind of means there's not enough around the world to be continuously used forever.
Yes. So it means there is a limited supply, right?
Yeah.
And what does that mean then as a result? Chris, I saw your hand was up. Because we have a limited supply of resources, what does that mean for us as people and as future economists? Sorry, I can't hear you.
It means that the goods or things that are looking out of
It means that the goods are?
going to run out somewhere.
are going to run out someday. So for us to prevent that running out, what must we do? We know that resources are limited, they are finite, and they might run out. So what is our role as economists to ensure that they don't run out?
To use them as well as we can, most useful.
Exactly. Remember yesterday the example of the cake? We know that we have a limited amount of flour, of baking powder, and of eggs, but we still want to get the biggest cake as possible. And when we do get this biggest cake, how do we want to divide it amongst everyone? Yes? I heard you, Silvano. Did someone else hear him? That's the correct answer. Are you okay today?
Yes,
Okay. So if we're saying that resources are limited, and we know that there's a possibility of them running out if we're not cautious about how we use them, what is our role or our task as economists? May I ask someone to get the door, please? Basil. Okay. Okay. Just a little bit. Thank you. Ibrahim, did you hear me? Did you hear my question? Okay. Do you have a response?
No, wait, no, I never hear the last part.
The last part was, we know that the resources are scarce, they're limited, and there's something that we must do so that they don't run out. What is it that we must do? What is our task as economists?
We need to share it equally.
Share them equally and use them. There's another word when you're defining scarcity. Use them?
Efficiently.
Yes. What is efficient? What does efficient mean?
The best way possible.
The best way possible. We minimize waste. We make sure that we stretch the resources as far as they can go. Okay, so that's it about scarcity. Can we get Chris to read 1.1.2 for us?
Rights that relatively every living person should have.
Okay, I think this we did even in primary school, right? Abija, do you have an idea? Chris? Human rights. Every person, I remember in primary would have to name at least 2 rights per day, especially children's rights, because we were children. So we'd have to say a child has the right to, let's just do that exercise. A child has the right to what?
I don't know.
Sorry? To education? Healthcare?
Shelter.
Shelter. My favorite one was food. I was like, a child has the right to food. Okay. Okay, so human rights. That one is straightforward, right? EBG, can you read 1.1.3 for us, please?
A closed economy is an economy without the sector.
Okay.
It's foreign.
So you're responding.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and your answer is?
Foreign.
Foreign sector, right? So a closed economy is an economy without the foreign sector. So what would that make an open economy?
An economy that trades.
Economy?
With other countries.
Economy that trades with other countries, right? If we're looking at South Africa, is South Africa an open or a closed economy? Very open. Eh? Why? Why do we say it's open? Why do we say South Africa is an open economy?
Because we do international trade.
Because
Because we do international trade.
we engage in international trade. How do we do that, Naledi? How do we engage in international trade?
I don't know, like,
There's 2 concepts. Think about 2 concepts. One of them, EBG really emphasized it yesterday. He gave it in most of his responses. Do you guys remember?
I don't know, man, he said a lot.
Sorry, he said a lot, ne? But there's this thing that he kept saying. He spoke about, yes.
Is it difficult to explain?
Yes. So that's how we engage in international trade, ne? Imports are?
Oh, imports are when you buy something, when you send it there, right? And then exports when you buy something from someone else. It's the opposite.
So let's think about exits. It's going.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yes.
So,
It's coming in, yeah. So that's how I would remember it. I'd be like in. X exits out. So that's how you can think about it, ne? Okay, so the answer for 1.1.3 would be C. Pena, are you here to read 1.1.4 for us on Teams? You're here, okay. Oh, I didn't scroll down. Okay, sorry, Pena. Thank you for that. You can see it now, right? Okay. Yeah, please read fast. 1.1.4. Okay, thank you. What's the answer? Do you have a response, Penyo? A. How do you pronounce that? What is that? What is A? Read that for me. It's a weird word, I know. It's a trough. So the lowest turning point of a business cycle is known as a trough. Okay, so remember a business cycle goes like this in waves. So the lowest part of the wave would be a trough. And what does this mean in terms of
No economic growth.
things are just not cute? It's terrible. It's bad. Yeah. And if you think about, have you heard about the Great Depression? After the First World, was it after or before the First World War? I think right after the Great Depression. It was terrible. There was hunger, there was famine, very low economic activity, political instability across the world. So it's just a very terrible time. What would be the, yes, Naledi?
So like, for our economy, would you say
Our economy, like specifically, are we going through like a depression phase because of the whole pandemic and COVID-19, and also like, I guess like, because I remember like in stores like Discare, they'd have to like bring in more hand sanitizers and some of that, and the food would even run out as well. So yeah.
Okay.
Just wondering, we're going through a depression phase.
Okay, thank you for that question, Naledi. Naledi's question, class, was, are we in a trough or a depression phase as the South African economy? And the response to that is easy. We are in a recession. Okay, so it's slightly better than a trough, but if the government doesn't take action to ensure that things get better, we might head to a depression, right? Yes.
But man, when it comes to the book, I don't know, I think it's economics book, but if you read where it talks about the chart, the depression, and
Yes.
the recession, it gives out very specific numbers what you need. And the last time I checked, we're technically in a depression due to economic growth. Because we need a little more economic growth to be in a recession. And our numbers from 2018 made us
Have been dwindling. Okay, I think let's differentiate between a recession and a trough, so that we can get clarity. So you're good to observe that there's very specific things that you look at when you see a recession, and very specific things to look at when a country gets into a depression. But let me just take two countries. Let's take South Africa, and then let's take Zimbabwe. Or let's take a war-torn country like Cameroon or South Sudan, right? When you compare, let's compare South Africa and Zimbabwe. Let's just make that comparative. South Africa is experiencing an inflation, which I think is not above 6% or slightly above if it is, right? Do you have an idea of the inflation situation in Zimbabwe? And inflation is the general increase in price levels. Do you have any idea? Do you have friends from Zim?
Yes,
Okay, what's the situation?
isn't like to buy fruit, it's like $1,000.
Yeah, things are very, very expensive. I have a friend that we live in the same building with, and what her family does is they buy things in bulk in South Africa, and then they take them home. So when they're going home, they'll buy 10 sets of, they'll buy all their toiletries, all the cooking oil, all the food supplies they can get here, and then find a way to transport it to Zim, because things are very, very expensive there. The country doesn't even have a stable legal currency. They're using the US dollar, right? So when we make that comparative, and we say that South Africa is in a recession, which started, I think, last year in the second quarter, because a recession is when a country experiences economic downswings for two consecutive quarters. So our recession, we got into it probably last year or late 2018. Things are bad, but they are not that bad. And that's the distinction between a recession and a depression. So we're heading downwards. That is so true. And Naledi, I commend you for observing that the pandemic has had very negative impact on the country. Prices of things are increasing. People are losing their jobs. Do you have someone who has lost their job that you know? Or a friend of a friend or a family member? Right? People who aren't getting paid, exactly. Because why are people not getting paid, even if they're still employed in some companies? Do you have an idea, Abija?
because like everything's down, like normally the company is a function of was during the lockdown and stuff. So like most things is closed, even the borders, because most companies transport their stuff like through the borders and stuff.
Yeah. That's very correct. So what companies are experiencing now is a very, very low level of profitability, which means that they can't pay their workers, even if they wanted to. Some companies are retrenching people. Some of them are just completely closing down. And this one time I was in CNA, and there was a sale where everything was 20 rands. Have you guys seen that?
Yes.
Did you see that? Everything was 20 rands because people were not buying the goods and service, the goods that CNA offers. So they decided to significantly drop the prices. Like books that you would find for 200 rands, I got them for 20 rands that day. And I went berserk because I was like, this is the first. And when I asked one of the workers, she said, no one is buying books because right now our priority is food. We have to eat. We have to just get the essentials so that we keep moving. So that's the difference between a recession and a trough. In a trough, it's very bad. It's terrible. But in a recession, it's what's happening in South Africa, where you see things slowing down and going under. Do you see the difference?
Like another thing I've noticed, like when you, let's say like you're gonna go on holiday to like America.
Yes.
And you have to like get like the actual money, like it's more expensive when we have to pay, but then when they have to come here, they're like money is like it's like cheaper.
Yes.
So
Yes, and that's a very good observation. It's a concept called the exchange rate, and we'll get into it when we do, I think, dynamics of market, no? Yes, so where we discuss currencies and why comparatively South Africa's currency is weaker compared to the rand, to the dollar I mean, and compared to the pound. Okay, that shows that things are not really working out well in our country because the currency's value keeps declining. And that's one other thing that shows us that we're in a recession. And also because we're a developing country. So there's a number of factors that go into that. Okay, thank you for this discussion, everybody. Okay, so we will move to 1.1.5. EBG, can you read that for us, please?
The use of tools and methods for producing something is called technology.
Yes, thank you. Are we okay with this one? Can we move? The answer is C, right? For 1.1.5. Abijay, can you read for us 1.1.6?
Which one of the following is not an example of an important system in the evaluation of economic systems?
Ma'am, what's mercantilism?
Okay, so we have there feudalism, metallurgy, mercantilism, and communism. Okay, and EBG is asking, what is mercantilism? Okay, so firstly, let's get the correct answer so that we can receive the correct answer for 1.1.6. Oh, sorry, I took up my. Sorry, for the people on Teams who are proceeding to 1.1.6, there we go. Can you see it now? Okay, thank you. Apologies for that. Thank you, Abija. 1.1.6, what's the answer, the correct answer? Okay, so let me give you the correct answer. No, let me not give you the correct answer. Let me explain all these concepts, and then you will tell me. Okay, so 1.1.6 says, which one of the following is not an example of an important system in the evolution of economic systems? So the key word to look at there is the last two words, economic systems. That's what we're looking at. So whatever it is that we're trying to find which is the answer is not an economic system. What is feudalism? Feudalism is a... Have you guys watched Robin Hood, the movie? Who has watched it? Honestly. Robin Hood, what happens in the movie?
It was basically a guy that just like helps people and stuff, and then because of like he's giving people money, like stealing money and giving money to the community, the king, so-called king, decided to banish him, and if you're able to show his face, you're going to like cover his head.
Yes. So there was a king, there were poor people that the king expected taxes from, and when they didn't pay, the king would like harass them and stuff like that. So Robin Hood is a guy who decided, I don't like this, I'm going to sort it out. So at night he would go steal some money from the king and then throw it around the community for the poor people to pick it up and have something. right? So if you watch the movie Robin Hood, it's set around the time of feudalism. Feudalism is an economic system where there was a hierarchy. So it's basically like this. You have the kings and the nobility on top. In the middle, you have the knights, you have the lords, and at the bottom, you have the peasants. So the people who are at the bottom of the food chain are the peasants, and they're struggling. And they depend on the kindness of the king to survive. And they also have to pay taxes and all of that. So it was a very, I can say, unfair economic system where, as I said, it's like this. At the very top, there's a very small amount of people who are living very well, but the rest of the population is just struggling. Okay, so that's feudalism. Metallurgy is the branch of science and technology which is concerned with the properties of metals and their production and purification. So metallurgy, a metallurgist is someone who will go to the mine, get the gold, and decide, okay, the gold must be melted at a temperature of 360 degrees Fahrenheit, for example. So a metallurgist is someone who deals with metals, basically. And then mercantilism, EBG, this is to answer your question, is an economic system of trade which spanned from the 16th century to the 18th century. It is based on the notion that a nation's wealth is increased. A nation's wealth is increased by large volumes of exports. Okay, so mercantilism comes from the word merchant. Do you guys know that word?
Yes.
What is a merchant?
A person who trades.
A person who trades. So mercantilism is an economic system which was based on trade. Okay, and
is it still in use?
Sorry?
Is it still in use?
Right now we are in a system that's called capitalism, and it does involve elements of trade, but there's varying differences between mercantilism and capitalism. You can look that up at home, and capitalism still does involve a lot of trade though, but there's other elements to it. Okay, and lastly, communism is an economic system where all property is owned by the community, it is controlled by the government, and everyone contributes according to their needs and abilities. Can you guys give me an example of a country that is communist that you know?
Russia.
Russia, yes. Why do you say that Russia is communist?
Because during the 1970s, Russia, the government wanted to be one of those.
Yes, they decided to adopt the ideology of communism, which means that unlike in South Africa, where certain people own land, certain people are rich because they own businesses, in Russia, everything is almost owned and controlled by the government. Yes.
Isn't China also technically communism?
Yes, because it's also called the Communist Republic of China. I don't know. Yeah, that's very correct. Thank you for those contributions, Savano. And have you guys heard of North Korea?
Yes.
Kim? Yeah, that's very, very communist as well. So those are, yes. It's a dictator, actually.
I also noticed also you can't, when you have emojis, you can't really find the North Korean flag.
Yeah.
So does that mean they don't want to be associated with anything?
Yeah, so they've closed them, because they're a dictatorship, they've closed themselves off from the rest of the world so that the world doesn't really see what's happening in North Korea. You don't get, even in the country itself, people don't have access to external TV channels. Like in South Africa, you have DSTV, where you're watching American channels and all of that. In North Korea, they just watch Korean television. They speak, it's like an attempt by the government to make sure that everything is internalized and the world doesn't get to really see what's happening. So they've removed themselves from that, and they limit the way in which people interact with the outside world. Okay, Silvani, you had something to add?
Isn't North Korea a closed economy? They don't export or import anything.
Yes.
Fully self-sufficient.
Yes, they're very self-sufficient, which is why it's very difficult for us to really know what's happening there. They've really closed themselves off.
A feud with America, because I've heard a lot of people talk about America versus North Korea, and the whole Kim Jong-un's gonna send missiles.
Nuclear, yeah. That's a very interesting discussion. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I can say that the main feud between the West and the East, Korea is in the East, right?
Asia.
In Asia, let's just put it like that. The first thing, one of the main things is the ideology. So the whole capitalism versus dictatorship versus communism is one of the issues that exist. And what America does is that they assume the role of big brother to the rest of the world, where they want to export democracy. And they say that they are the land of the free and they are one of the biggest economies in the world. So they should stand the chance to influence countries for the better and to make countries like North Korea to bend to democracy and not really assume a dictatorship. Because what the United States of America has done, as I said, is appoint themselves as this pioneer of democracy. So what the problem is then is that Kim and the rest of the family and the governmental system, they don't want a democracy. And what the United States does is if a country doesn't want democracy, they start fighting. That's one of the things that happens even in African countries, where some dictatorships in Africa have discussions with the United States, where the United States is saying, if you stop this type of system, we can trade with you, we can remove sanctions, we can start having relationships. But if you don't, then we don't want anything to do with you. And most countries don't want to be in the bad books of the United States of America because it's one of the biggest economies in the world, if not the biggest, competing with China, right? So I think that's part of the feud. But that's something also that you can look up and we can continue the discussion on Monday. Is that okay? But does that answer the question at least on a basic level? Okay, thank you. So let's go back then to our question. Which one of the following is not an example of an important system in the evolution of economic systems? Yes, because it has absolutely nothing to do with economic systems or the economy. Okay, let's just wrap up multiple choice. So a population natural growth rate is determined by A, deaths, B, births, C, immigrants, D, migration. B, births. Okay. 1.1.8. Which one of the following does not explain the high stationary phase of the demographic cycle? A, birth and death rates in this stage are very high. B, growth is very slow and fluctuating. C, children are seen as economic assets. And D, this stage is characterized by mechanization and urbanization. D. Correct. Yes. D is the correct answer. So that ends our lesson for today. We're done with multiple choice. I will be here for the homework lesson. So if anyone needs extra support in terms of responding to the rest of the questions, because that's what you're supposed to do, you will go home and complete 1.2, 1.3, and start with question 2 as well. Am I right, ma'am?
Just for this lesson, the read of the lesson 1.2 and 1.3.
Okay. Okay. So 1.2 and 1.3, and we resume our discussions on that.
Maybe what you can do?
Yes, ma'am.
Just to recap on the answers, especially for the 1.2.
Wow,
because one was lecture and things like that. So
okay.
And also the people in class, they can also write it in their books. They'll just listening.
Okay, ma'am.
You get home and you forgot and you have to redo it. How do I do this now?
True. Okay, let me just do a quick recap of the answers. Thank you for that, ma'am. So 1.1.1 is B. 1.1.2 is D. 1.1.3 is C. 1.1.4 is A. Sorry, yes. 3 is C. 4 A. 4 is A, trough. 5 is C, technology. 6 is B, metallurgy. 7 is B, births, and 8 is D. The stage is characterized by mechanization and urbanization. Daniel, are you okay? Sorry? 7 is B, yes, thank you. And 8 is D.
People, there's still 10 minutes. I don't know why we're walking around.
Not 10 minutes.
People always walk around. I can't even walk around.
There's 1 minute.
There is.
There's 1 minute.
Literally.
Yeah, it's 40-minute lesson on Friday.
Ooh, guys, am I not going to drag this whole...
Yeah, Charlotte, something was wrong. Sorry. I'm awake today.
I have the awake version.
I only have it on Friday. I'm sorry.
Special day.
Yeah, you only did 1 minute.
1 day special. Chris, you good today?
Ma'am? Ma'am, did you say goodbye to people on team? Do you know that the lesson is over before then?
You see the people on team? Pena and everyone else on team?
Bye now.
Okay, bye guys. So, yes, you got the answers. Okay, thank you for that. The lesson is over. You will have to complete 1.2 and 1.3 as your homework. And yeah, we'll resume the discussion on Monday. In terms of the after school sessions, will you be here on Monday? Monday you'll be here. Okay. So we'll just, yeah, what must I prepare? You didn't send me the topics. Okay, please, Ned, so that I can prepare for our session on Monday. We'll have probably like 20 minutes of economics after school. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.